Okay, hello, my friends. My name is Darren Gerdes. It is Wednesday, December 4th, 2024, and this is the Daily Brief. There are 1,670 Russians off the battlefield. Now, if you've been at this for some time with me, you would know that that's not in the top 10, but very close to it. 1,670 is here, December 4th. It's the 11th highest day of casualties. Again, I count ties as ties, so maybe it's like 15th or something if you count it differently, but that's still pretty high for the casualty rate. 7 tanks off the battlefield, 31 armored fighting vehicles, 26 artillery systems, 80 vehicles and fuel tanks. So the fight on the front line is still pretty hot. Okay, let's look at Andrew Perpetua's list, and it looks like it's about 1.5, maybe not quite to 1, something along those lines. And these are vehicles and other things that he's been able to tabulate and verify through video evidence. All right. Congratulations to Rocket Forces and Artillery Day. Every day, artillerymen destroy the enemy, protecting our people, supporting the brothers in arms on the front lines. Thank you for every accurate strike that brings us closer to victory. These guys have a really tough job. When you're outgunned and you are ill-supplied and you still have to be able to, like yesterday I was talking to Greg Terry. That video will come out today, where we're just talking about casualty rates and things along those lines. And like, just imagine, like, if it wasn't for drones, they wouldn't have been able to equalize this. But drones allowed them to more precision strike when they were down, 5-1 in artillery or whatever the figures were. Okay. Out of 50 Shahed drones launched, 29 were shot down, 18 were suppressed by electronic warfare, 1 more left in the direction of Russia. So most of that, which is good. So you're not seeing lots of damage on civilian apartment blocks or whatever now. So, but you do see this early morning drone strikes hits Ryazan's Diaghilevo air base. This is 700 kilometers from Ukraine. So the sky is not supposed to look like that at night, and because it looks like this the rest of the time. Yeah, so it's not supposed to look like that at night, and we'll find out what it is. There's a really rich irony in an Air Force base being targeted by drones. Strategic military facility housing 2 95 MS bombers and critical aviation units targeted in this pre-dawn attack. Another drone hit the barracks of the Special Purpose Police Regiment named after Akhmat Kadyrov in Grozny around 4:50 a.m. local time. So the Russian media claims that there was no casualties, but they always claim that there are no casualties, so that's nothing new. The origin of the drone is unclear. Now, it could be infighting between local Russian elites, right? It could be Ukraine did it, or it could be people across in the next neighboring region that aren't getting along with the Chechens. Could be, we just don't know what it is, but okay. Since the beginning of the full-scale war in Ukraine, 2,167 medical facilities have been destroyed or damaged as a result of Russian aggression. This wasn't just because of yesterday or anything. This is just like this news about the 2,167 just came out. The Ukrainian Defense Minister Umerov announces that the Palanytsya drone missile has entered the mass production with support from the Ministry of Defense. Additionally, the production of R-360 Neptune cruise missiles has been restored and scaled up with enhanced range capabilities. If I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, if I'm not mistaken, Neptune is what sunk the Moskva. So producing more of those will be a good thing. How is it possible that for Russian society to be this hateful, this devoid of humanity? And what is he talking about? Russia uses, and this was from the Financial Times, Russia uses civilians as target practice for killer drones. Southern Ukrainian city of Ryazan hits more than 9,500 times as Moscow attempts to drive out residents. So this is when we're talking about the human safari. Right? But he goes on and says, how can we as free and powerful nations keep sitting on our hands watching these atrocities at such a horrific scale? Yeah, that's right. So yesterday I was on Red Lines, and we weren't talking about that, but I was on Red Lines with this guy here who actually was the guy that created the Human Safari documentary. And hopefully we were talking yesterday and said hopefully we'll have him on so that he can explain what he saw and what, give you more context about that. Okay. Zelenskyy says the day began with a briefing from the commander-in-chief on the current situation and challenges. The Donetsk direction requires significant reinforcement, particularly through weapons from our partners. Okay, so we all know that that's the case. I'll show you the little, what was attacked where in just a moment. But Zelensky's got a really tough job. Let me back up and give you an example of what his job is. His job is to equip those moving forward, and if he fails there, then the system collapses, and he understands that. And so he's been out there, trying to can we get these weapons or these missiles or these rockets or these artillery pieces or whatever. I have a president at my university who, we're at lunch, and he was sitting there talking and said, well, my job is to resource you. Your job is to teach. So I'm not expected to go shake down would-be applicants who, do you want to come to class? I'm not expected to go shake down donors and ask, would you please give to the university? That's his job. And if he does his job, I can do my job in the classroom. And that's how this works. That's a great example of the same kind of thing. We were working with partners hard on our own production. Ukraine's defense industry is growing, and soon there'll be more of our long-range capabilities. So whether he can get a missile or money to create the missiles, either way, his job's to resource, and he's got a pretty tough job. Okay, Russian forces recently advanced near Toretsk, Pokrovsk, and meanwhile, the Ukrainian forces recently advanced in Kursk Oblast and regained lost positions near Kupiansk. So let's look a little bit more at the battlefield. So yesterday I asked you, hey, do you like this system where I'm just kind of showing you progressively fewest attacks to most attacks? And nobody said, well, I might have missed a comment or somewhere, but nobody said no that I can recall. Everybody seemed to like that. So this is what I'll keep doing as we move on in the future. Thank you for your feedback. The north of Kharkiv region, there's unsuccessfully stormed Ukrainian positions. So because he only said that in the singular, I'm going to say, let's say that's once. Bakhmut front, 3 attacks. Zaporizhia region, 4 attacks. Kherson region, 5 times. Lyman direction, 9 times. Kupiansk direction, 16 times. Remika direction, 23 times. Kharkov direction, 38 times. And Pokrovsk, 44 times. So those are the heavy hitters, and they're usually the heavy hitters between Kharkov and Pokrovsk, which aren't too far from each other. And those are the areas that the Russians are focusing on. That's giving them 1,670 casualties day over day. Okay, Putin's niece accidentally revealed the approximate number of missing Russian soldiers. Now, I'm not sure what you do with this number because these could already be factored into the Ukrainian casualty statistics. And so you can't just tack that on and say, see, there's another 50,000 that are, I don't think that's fair. Now you could add that to the missing Russian figures that are periodically put together by third parties. The Russian figures aren't going to be anything you can hang your hat on, and that'll give you a fairer position or understanding of what's actually happened. Russian authorities have received 48,000 applications for DNA tests to find missing Russian soldiers. So they know that they're missing, and 48,000 have submitted applications, which means the number could be higher in the number of people that are actually missing, that the applications just haven't been submitted. But we also don't know that they're actually off the battlefield. They could be, they could still be out there as just missing in a different unit or captured as a POW. They don't necessarily have to be gone from this world. I'm trying to say things so that YouTube is kind to me. Katarpalov, head of the Duma's Defense Committee, said this was secret information, asked that the figures be not voiced anywhere else. Okay, so 48,000 applications for DNA tests to find missing Russian soldiers. Okay, now Jay in Kyiv posted this. For Russians, those idle years from birth to 16 can now be allocated to doing all those Russian things like pouring iron that'll soon be raining down on the good people of NATO countries. Now, it's not quite that simple. 16-year-olds, so you got to 1 to 15 doesn't count. Ministry of Industry and Trade proposed allowing 16-year-olds to work in heavy industries. Why? Because they need the workers. They're short-staffed and they're trying to get onto more of a war footing, and they keep cannibalizing these workers for the front line, so that becomes problematic. Jay in Kiev again, nice to see Putin grabbing his own Muscovites and throwing them to the front. Muscovy continues to its crackdown on young Russians eligible for conscription. For instance, officials try to break into the apartment of a 22-year-old student, cutting off the electricity entirely. When he came out, they forcibly took him to a medical examination. How about that? So they're running low to the point that they're doing this, and that tells you a lot about where Russia is in its need for soldiers. Okay, so yesterday I talked about this Russian tycoon that warns that Putin will reject his peace offer, and it was carried, Jake Bro carried this as, will tell Kellogg to screw himself. Yeah, that's what he said. Well, Kellogg's reaction was interesting. Trump's envoy on Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, responds to Russian oligarchs' dismissal of Trump's peace proposal. Get back in your box. Let's hear what he had to say.
This tycoon says Kellogg comes to Moscow with his plan. We take it and then tell him to screw himself because we don't like any of it. That'd be the whole negotiation. For the talks to be constructive, we need to talk not about the future of Ukraine, but the future of Europe and the world. Real quick, final thought. Or final reaction, I should say.
Yeah, my reaction to that, he better understand who Donald J. Trump is, because it's a big mistake to underestimate Donald J. Trump. The world has done that before, and it's made a massive mistake. This is not Keith Kellogg. We're talking about the United States of America and President Trump, and he will handle it like he's always handled it. And I would just my comment to him is, better get back in your box and better understand President Trump, because clearly you don't, and you clearly do not understand the United States of America.
Got it.
Okay, so, and there's a reason why he might think that that's okay to say. He might think that in the past he could get away with that. Maybe he will be able to in the future, but Kellogg's putting him on notice saying, no, that this isn't going to work out. Now, it's the tone that gets me. It's not so much what Kellogg's message is, but okay, when Trump's trying to create some kind of negotiation, and Zelenskyy has been, and most Ukrainians have been very kind in their approach to things and saying, look, we need this, but we can't give on this. We absolutely need these security things. But Trump is going to do some good work here, and that's the kind of tone that they're putting forward. The Russians are like, yeah, screw you and the horse you rode in on, right? That's not going to go over well for somebody that's trying to broker the deal. And my guess is if you continue with that tone, Ukraine will get more aid as the Russians, just try to push back. And the Russians aren't in any way interested in giving up anytime soon. They still are, as far as I can detect, and this is the ISW and other organizations saying the same thing, pursuing maximalist objectives. So I don't think that's going to go well for the Russians. Now, when we were talking about the other day, Trump's picks for confirmation, the two most dangerous are Tulsi Gabbard and Pete Hegseth as far as anything related to Ukraine is concerned. Now, most of the rest of them are going to sail in with like 90% likelihood in poly market. That's what you're looking at here of being approved. But Pete Hegseth has dropped like a rock. My guess is that he's going to be dropping out in a few days because this is just, he's down to 12%. He was at like 60% just a few days ago. And then Tulsi Gabbard's the other one that's really questionable about, and Tulsi is really a greater threat as far as anything Ukraine related is concerned. So we'll keep our eyes on that and see what happens. Okay, David Lammy is talking about how we're living in dangerous times with the war in Europe and instability around the world. And I just want you to hear just a little of what he has to say.
We're living in very dangerous times. And as we look across the world with war here on our continent in Europe, with the tremendous aggression that we're seeing across the Middle East, with the hand of Iran so present in the Middle East, and with this rising conflict in Sudan and now in Syria, there is one country whose hand is in so much of it, and that is Russia.
Yep. And that's right. And Greg Carey and I were talking about that yesterday in the video that we shot for my channel. It's like Russia is just, they seem to be behind everything. That was the idea behind this Loki looking with Putin's face on it, because Loki was the god of mischief. And that's kind of what it feels like. Now, I'm not sure that that's actually what was behind what was happening in South Korea. Like, they have their own domestic problems as it is, but it probably was the North Koreans were probably stirring the pot too, trying to create some waves. And if you're not familiar with what happened, it was crazy what happened yesterday in South Korea. Just go back and look at this video. And so, yeah, but they're constantly stirring the pot. Okay. Just read the Budapest memorandum, 6 short paragraphs, and Russia has broken every single one. Why would anyone believe that Russia will keep any agreement without being backed by decisive force? Now, and I've read the Budapest memorandum as well, and when you read it, the U.S. says they're offering assurances. And that is translated as guarantees in the translation. So that was bad diplomacy, whoever was involved in the translation of this sort of thing. And yeah, Russia broke it clearly. And the UK and the United States, I think, have a moral obligation to do something about that, to provide for the Ukrainians. On this day in 2009, Russia reaffirmed our commitment to the 1994 Budapest Memorandum, guaranteeing Ukraine's territorial integrity, signed in exchange for their nukes, delivery systems, 44 heavy bombers, Tu-22, and 1,068 Kh-55 cruise missiles, which have been fired at Ukraine in this war. Huh. About that. All right, my friends, that's all that I have for you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.